Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler, and today we're taking a trip down memory lane to revisit a film that transported us back to the awkwardness, the charm, and the pure magic of adolescence. Yes, that's right. We are discussing the number 40 film on the 50 best rom-coms list, 13 Going on 30. Acclaimed film director, producer, actor, and frequent guest to the podcast, Mark Blitch, will be joining me here in a sec to discuss this time-traveling escapade. Before we jump into that conversation, Whitney is here with me to talk about some pressing matters. But before we jump into that, how are you holding up during this holiday season?
Great. I'm doing good. We're coming to the end. You know, it's always like a countdown.
Yeah.
Not only, it used to be a countdown to Christmas, now it's just a countdown to getting it all done.
Yeah, pretty much. So back in early October, we dedicated an episode to talk about the television shows that we were watching. And in that episode, we talked quite a bit about the Golden Bachelor and how much we were enjoying Gerry's journey to find a second wife. So the season wrapped up this past Thursday and was definitely not short of drama. So I thought it'd be fun to get your quick take. So I think the episodes past, I think people would know by now who he chose. So how do you feel about him choosing Teresa?
Well, I never wanted it to be Teresa.
Right.
I never liked her from the get-go. I think the show painted it that way, so I think that was bad on the show. If they know it's going to be somebody, they should paint him in a better light. Because I never liked her. Now, I did like her when she went home to her family, and so that's probably telling.
She seemed a lot more comfortable, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's just like super kind of annoying. I definitely think he picked her solely for the money, which is weird. So I feel like so much stuff came out about him after where he didn't really have his glorified job, and then he didn't like her. And then the minute he heard what she did, he was like, oh, sign me up for that. And so she's a stockbroker or something, trades stocks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know. I didn't like her, but I really just wanted it to be Joan or Ellen, and neither one of them were winning, so what do I know?
Yeah. Did you like Leslie?
I did like Leslie. I would never want my dad to marry Leslie.
Yeah.
Like,
I liked her a lot. I just never saw them together.
No.
He seemed a little not well, even she cussed or something in front of him, and he laughed, and she said, "Oh, I can talk like that around you." And that was towards like the very end.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, "Oh, if this is happening now." I heard somewhere that she has a brother who is like a famous drummer for a rock band, and that seemed to kind of make a little sense.
He's a little too straight-laced for her.
Yeah.
But I think some of his was an act. Like, he was so sweet and innocent, and I think now it's coming out that he maybe isn't. And I don't know. I just, it was such a great season, and then I didn't like now. And now they're getting married in like 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
And she didn't even tell her sisters that were there at the hometown, so she's obviously close to him. It seems like it's going to blow up.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what we're supposed to want to happen.
Yeah. The other really big drama was just the initial breakup that he did with Leslie, which I will say, at least he didn't wait until they were like, she got dressed up and all that kind of stuff.
I did like that.
Yeah, but I laughed because I said, this is what you get when you have older women on the show. I mean, she did not hold back about how she was feeling in the moment, which was good.
Yeah, well, and it was truthful. Like, we all heard him. It wasn't even speculation. We all heard him say, "You're my number one." Like, you can't you can say that to somebody if you're just dating them and then you don't have to marry them, but like, not if you're in a contest. Being number one means that she's going to win. Yeah. And that gave false hope. I thought that was weird. Yeah.
Are you excited about the new season? And I've already forgot his name. I know he's a tennis guy.
Oh, I mean, I'll watch all the seasons.
Right. Joey?
I think he's kind of a weird pick, but I mean, I liked him, but I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be hard to go back to catty girls after the women were so fun.
Yeah.
And so I think they're going to have to do a better job of like not letting them be catty or not editing it to their cattiness, because nobody found that appealing. I think that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back into 13 going on 30, would you say this is one of your favorite of yours?
Yeah, I love 13 going on 30. I think it's great. There's lots of funny parts. It's probably actually one of my favorites now just because it's plays a big part in our engagement video with the last scene. And so like I have more nostalgia for it than I probably did even when I first saw it. But I do think it's hilarious. I think it's a great out-of-body experience one where she truly acts like she's 13 at different times, and I think it's a funny story.
Yeah, and with us having a daughter who's currently 13 right now, it is kind of funny seeing the stuff play out.
Totally.
They definitely nailed some
and they
aspects.
nailed it. Yeah, it was great, and I enjoyed rewatching it with her. I think it's awesome.
In my conversation with Mark, he actually had a question for you. And so I was going to play that for you right now and have you answer it.
I want to know, and I kind of wish we had like your wife on here to tell me. I think Mark Ruffalo is a pretty charming man.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily stick out to me as a romantic lead type. And maybe that's why it was a little subversive. He's charming. He's got kind of swagger. But I was like, I remember thinking like this, I don't want to say that he's miscast. He doesn't strike me as your stereotypical romantic comedy lead like McConaughey was back in those days.
Well, considering I think he kind of looks and acts like you, I think I must be geared towards that, right? You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. You didn't? I thought you were setting me up for that.
No.
I think he's actually really well cast for the part that was written for him, because he looks like Maddie as the little boy. I mean, obviously he grows into a man, and so, but like that little boy of Maddie wouldn't have grown into somebody that wasn't like that kind of artistic. I mean, he was artistic. He made that dollhouse. Like, that's how he was going to be. And I think that's who her 13-year-old self, if she had stayed on the nice track, would have liked somebody that was wearing tennis shoes and casual like that. So, but she did not go with her 30-year-old version of herself that had all the fancy stuff and all the, So, but I think there was a good difference in between the two. But he's definitely the nice character, and I always like the nice guy. I never like the bad guy. Ever. In any show, I don't understand why people like the bad guy, and so... But then I married the nice guy with the brown curly hair that kind of looks like you. Kind of looks like him.
Well, I'm sorry I never made you a dollhouse while we were dating.
You made me a lot of videos and artistic projects, though, so you did make me things.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I haven't done such
those
things.
ceased after we got married. Ceased.
But now I created
Ceased to exist.
I created a podcast where I'm getting to elevate your voice.
Oh, yes. Thank goodness.
Well, let's press play on our boombox and see if 13 going on 30 still sparkles.
Jenna Rink couldn't grow up fast enough.
Smile, sweetie.
Don't you knock?
Are you wearing a bra?
You're not ready.
And she woke up 17 years later.
All right. Well, I am welcoming in frequent guest and movie guru, Mark Blitch. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know if I would say a guru, but that's very nice of you.
Jumping into this movie, kind of I asked how you're doing now, but if you were your 13-year-old self at this moment, what do you think your answer would be to that question?
To how I'm doing?
Yeah.
How would my 13-year-old feel right about now? Oh, a lot of questions. A lot of questions about my body, I think I would have. My dad didn't really give me the talk super, super well when it comes to the birds and the bees, so I had to discover a lot of things by myself on accident. So I think I would be pretty terrified right now at what's happening to my body, I guess. We could go into it, but I won't.
Yeah, I think that's enough detail. Before we actually talk about this movie, as a kid, and I'm kind of undercutting the movie Musings segment, but did you ever long to be an adult? There's other movies, similar to this movie, like Big and that sort of thing. Is that something you ever remember, like even kind of desiring around that age?
No, mine was more the opposite. Mine was kind of the classic, oh man, if I was a 13-year-old now, what I would know, how I would carry myself. Mm-hmm. It would be more of that side. I don't know if I think, you definitely had those like papers where you would write what you would want to be when you grow up, but I don't think I was in any hurry to be 30 or even college. High school was the best time of my life at that point, and so you didn't really want to leave that. At least you thought it was the best time in your life. So I think I probably would just want to stay put.
Yeah. The one thing I know for sure, I was excited to get my driver's license. And so I loved being like, I would, as soon as I got that, I'd ask my mom, like, you need any errands to run? I liked that sort of freedom. And it's real funny now because Whitney works with a lot of teenagers, and there's just a lot of kids these days that they don't rush out to get their driver's license when they turn 16.
Yeah, I didn't either. I actually waited because my dad said that I had to kind of do it myself and he was going to be my teacher. So I was the one to I had to be the one to force it. And I had enough friends that could drive. So I didn't really feel like the need to. So I don't think it was until, it wasn't that long. It was like 3 or 4 months after my 16th birthday when I finally, started doing it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So jumping into this movie, I pulled kind of a fun description from ChatGPT. I was kind of tired of getting pulled just the lines you would usually find at the, in the back of the DVD box or whatever. Yeah. So I typed into ChatGPT, give me a snarky description of this movie. So here's the synopsis if anybody hasn't seen this movie for whatever reason. 13 going on 30. Because who needs character development when you can just magically skip puberty and become Jennifer Gardner? This film takes the classic wish fulfillment trope to a whole new level as a teenage girl magically wakes up in her 30-year-old self's body. Forget about the emotional roller coaster of adolescence. Just throw in some thriller dance moves and poof, you're an adult. Watch as Jennifer Gardner navigates the perils of adulting with all the grace of a giraffe on roller skates. I thought that was a little rude. Okay, but anyway, if you're looking for a dose of nostalgia and a lesson on the consequences of skipping over the awkward teen years, well, you won't find it here. But hey, at least there's Mark Ruffalo to make you swoon while the plot does some somersaults in the background. So anyway, do you feel like that's a good little take on this movie?
I think no, it's not. And it's comforting too because just you don't want AI to understand everything.
You're offended.
Not offended. I'll give it the side eye. It's not a bad description. It's a fun description. Misses the whole point of the movie, I feel like, but good for ChatGPT. That's a good. Yeah, you should keep doing that so we can just destroy it each time.
So, do you enjoy this movie? Is it one that you've seen a lot before, or?
Yeah, I think I first saw it maybe with Hannah, my wife, at some point in college, and I was probably not too keen on it, just because it's kind of a female version of Big, but
it leans towards that direction. Yeah. Like if you're not someone who like grew up reading like 17 and those types of things, they're definitely appealing to a certain genre of moviegoer here.
Yeah, and I don't remember if this was the first one that kind of relaunched it, because I know that there's the Parent Trap, remake or whatever with Lohan, but I feel like this may have jump-started some other kind of wish fulfillment body swap because it was so successful. I remember you had Bateman and Ryan Reynolds in The Change Up. I felt like there were other couple ones that kind of tried to ape the success, but this movie feels very early 2000s rom-com, and so you kind of miss those because they were still probably shooting on film. They actually had a cinematographer. Everything seemed it's very well directed. But no, I really enjoy it. Me and my wife kind of watched it over like 1 or 2 nights, and it's just a really pleasant movie. And Jennifer Garner's so adorable, and she's perfect.
Yeah, it's not gonna, and it's not even trying to, even reinvent the wheel, I would say, but it is just, it's a fun watch. It's a fun watch. And, even though there's some things, you can kind of like nitpick about it for sure. It's one that we enjoy. And especially, how old are your boys again?
13 and 11.
Okay, 13, 11. So we have a 13-year-old and a 8-year-old, but especially we watched this with Hallie, and one, she really enjoyed it. But also I would say you don't necessarily have to have girls to enjoy this movie, but there's some aspects of Jennifer Gardner's performances, and I think some of the jokes where her doing a 13-year-old girl, reactions to things, she does a really good job with. And it made me probably laugh a little bit more because I'm like, oh my gosh, especially now with my girls being a little older, I'm like, yeah, they kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I forgot. I don't remember. I think I was watching it, and there was something that the Sixes did that are like, I don't know if it's now or because my son's 13. He's kind of shy, but also really annoying when he wants to be. Are these girls, in the 80s, were they more grown up? For mature for they just seem like they're just so much older than 13. I know that the actresses are probably 14, 15 years old. That's not what I'm saying, but it just seems like in the 80s the trope was, I don't know, they were always just so, they had, their personalities were already formed. Like they have adult personalities. And I guess that's why it's a movie, but I'm like, I look at my 13-year-old and I'm like, he's got no presence compared to these high school girls.
It is really funny now, the dynamic of the girls and the boys at like Hallie's junior high. It's like she's playing basketball, and her basketball team walks in and they don't have anybody like abnormally tall or where you're like even like, oh my gosh, wow. But then when the 7th grade boys basketball team comes in behind them, and most of them are generally shorter, like it's just funny. They're just, the girls and boys at that age are just in two different places for sure.
They are, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you would probably agree. This movie is real charming, even though I couldn't help but wonder. So Jennifer Gardner's character is Jenna. So there's a young Jenna, and she, wishes to be older, and she does. But kind of in some other movies, you kind of feel like, so like in the Freaky Friday remake, Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, like they're really like fighting and they're at odds with each other. And so it kind of explains why they body swap to kind of get a better appreciation for one another. As I was watching this one, I was kind of like, does Jenna deserve all of this? She really seems like a good person. So I don't quite know why the universe chose Jenna to go through this experience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say you kind of, some of the things that, she thought all her problems would be solved when she's 30 and had this ideal of who she wanted to be. And so you're being forced to kind of confront that version of yourself to see, does the 13-year-old really know what's best for you? And is that the best time to have your wishes fulfilled?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I was going to ask you something. Did you see all the Marvel connections? Like as far as actors go, and not like actual connections, but like as far as, and not just MCU. So I'm not going to quiz you too much.
Well, so Jennifer Gardner, she played Elektra a long time ago.
Yeah.
Ruffalo is famously, he was the Hulk.
Yeah.
It was Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis was in Black Panther. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's right. Am I missing anybody else?
You got three more.
Three more?
Three more. One MCU, two kind of Marvel adjacent.
Jim Gaffigan hasn't been in anything.
I did see that. That was fun. No, you have Lily Collins, who's Ruffalo's fiance. She was in X-Men Wolverine. She was kind of the love interest that gets killed.
Okay.
And then you have Judy Greer was Ant-Man's ex-wife.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then Brie Larson was was in the Sixes.
She was?
Yeah, she doesn't have any lines. And honestly, I didn't recognize it the first time. And then we were watching the credits, and Hannah's like, says Brie Larson's in this. I'm like, oh, I bet she's a 6. So we went back and watched it, and there she is. And apparently, like, Ruffalo didn't know that, so he was on the red carpet at Endgame, and they already showed him a picture of Brie Larson in 13 going on 30, and he had no clue. And it definitely. Usually, I was mad because usually I catch that stuff on first viewing, and I just wasn't even processing.
That's funny. I did want to note that the young Jenna, played by Krista B. Allen. I mean, as far as if you go, there's lots of movies where there's a younger self or an older self. I mean, this would have to be number one as far as like how similar they look without being related.
Oh yeah, and you I guess that actress posted a Halloween photo of her in that dress with the chopstick haircut, and it's pretty great.
That's amazing.
Because I was going to mention that, like, the casting of the younger versions. I thought was it Lucy, or I thought they cast young Judy Greer perfectly. But I also will say that the Mark Ruffalo child actor is just they kind of write it off and say, oh, I lost weight. I'm not saying that. He just does not look like Mark Ruffalo in any stretch. So you get the best casting of a younger version along with the worst casting, or at least casting as far as looks go.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the notes I had to ask you. Is like I had written down kid Maddie to grown up Maddie, kind of a stretch.
Oh, it's a stretch, and I want to know, and I kind of wish we had like your wife on here to tell me. I think Mark Ruffalo is a pretty charming man.
Yeah,
he doesn't necessarily stick out to me as a romantic lead type, and maybe that's why it was a little subversive. He's charming. He's got kind of swagger. But I was like, I remember thinking like this, I don't want to say that he's miscast because he's not. He does great. Yeah. One, it seems below him a little bit in the terms of the kind of movies he was making back then. He doesn't strike me as your stereotypical romantic comedy lead like McConaughey was back in those days.
Yeah, he's definitely more on the serious side, and he definitely plays the character very much like that. He's pretty laid back, and it kind of goes with everything, but is assertive, but kind of in a nice way. I love the banter between him and Judy Greer as adults, the little jabs that they make at each other.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Speaking of charming, I did think that Jennifer Garner's boyfriend looked like Prince Charming from Shrek. I thought that was perfect casting too.
It's a very over the top performance, but I'll be honest, it made me laugh. It made me laugh. So, and even when when he like starts taking off his clothes and like her reaction, like it's pretty funny. You really think that would happen.
and one thing that I do appreciate about 13 going on 30 is I think it ages a little bit better. Like the most controversial, as opposed to Big, which doesn't really give off the fact they insinuated. They didn't even insinuate. Like the fact that Elizabeth Perkins and Tom Hanks sleep with each other, knowing he's a 13-year-old boy, doesn't go down as easy in 2023. There's nothing really about this movie that you could say is problematic in that sense, other than maybe him going up to her going up to a 13-year-old at that bar, and asking to go out with her. That was probably the most problematic thing, because everything else was just, that's how a 13-year-old would react to that, and the other person isn't committing a crime.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I made mention of it a little earlier, but some of the moments I did like is I liked when she was just in the meeting, and when she had her notepad and she put her name on the top line of her notes. I thought that was a really funny touch. I think the kind of surprise cut to the sleepover where she's talking about her romantic night with Maddie, and it's this like sleepover with all these other girls, and it does have the like right tone this movie does, where you don't think so much that like why would parents let like all these girls stay with this seemingly stranger? You know,
Yeah,
but
well, I mean, I do think that one, it's her performance too. You actually believe that she's 13, and also, you, women are less sketchy than men. At the end of the day.
yeah, yeah. Also, a big, especially you were talking about, this movie feeling a little, definitely of the early 2000s. As we've been watching movies on this list, I mean, this decade was just ripe with like these characters working at a magazine or some kind of journalism of some sort. I just really laughed at that. Like this is the mecca, a magazine company in New York City.
And that magazine has competition
Right.
that they have to stay ahead of. And then we're looking at what, 13 going on 30, I think was, all I remember is Frost Your, not 13 going on 30, I'm sorry. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with the whole go frost yourself. And it's always, because it always has to be New York. It always has to be in a high rise. And there's always someone there who's undermining your main character. Like it's cookie cutter romantic comedy situations for sure. Almost as if AI or ChatGPT wrote it.
Right, exactly. So, are there any favorite scenes that you have from this movie, or any favorite quotes?
I really like just the first scene when she wakes up, and just the blocking that they do whenever like the guy takes off his towel and she pops open the umbrella, and just really all her interactions when she first, she's in the elevator with that girl, and there's just nothing. It's just all very wholesome. Where it's like it just feels very. It could be obviously a very creepy situation. Maybe that's just the 2023 version of me, but there's just something really wholesome about all of it, and I buy it. And that may have been like maybe pre or right around Arrested Development, Judy Greer, so she was at the height of her powers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I like movies that are kind of like about kindness and being nice, and maybe it's just because the reality of the world that we live in. It's just there's just something really refreshing about a nice light movie that teaches people to be kind. And I think that would resonate with people. Whereas if it were being made now, it would probably have a lot more political, charged, background and backstory. So yeah, as far as like my favorite scene, I'd probably say when she woke up.
I know you're there, and my parents are totally gonna be home any minute. Ah!
Hey, sweet bottom. Where's the conditioner?
You're naked.
Well, not yet.
To touch on what you just mentioned, I made a note. I kind of like how Judy Greer's character Lucy, even when she basically steals Jenna's idea, or kind of thwarts it, but basically when she gives her pitch to everybody, I like how it fails. And it kind of in a way is showing that she still did things afterwards to try to really stick it to Jenna. But I like that it was showing that like her actions, that's not always the way to just be successful automatically.
Oh yeah,
I think a lot of people, if they've been a fan of this movie and if they've just watched it for the first time, the Thriller dance scene has to stand out. How do you feel about that scene?
I always thought it was a little bit cringy.
Yeah.
I did, and I think it's awful also because Ruffalo is a great actor. I just don't think he can dance.
Well, I read that it was like one of his first days on set, and he hadn't really even got to like rehearse all that much. It was a nightmare for him.
What a nightmare! And then Andy Serkis just kills it as he always does. He's my. I think I was on another podcast with a friend of mine, and we did like a Mount Rushmore greatest performances out of top 4 greatest performances that were not nominated for Oscars. And he was there for either Gollum or Caesar, whatever you want to take. And it's such an interesting choice with him. We'll get to that. Let's go back to Thriller. Yeah, I don't know what it was. I remember even in the trailer, I was like, it just doesn't really work for me. But it's less. I think it's because I loved Thriller growing up. I loved the music video. And it's like, these people don't know how to do it well. It's just too awkward white people trying to do it. And then Andy Serkis comes in and does great. But it just never really resonated with me as like a classic scene. Like I feel like it wanted to be the big moment with the chopsticks, but it doesn't quite have the timelessness of that.
Yeah, any, not just this movie, but any scene where there's all of a sudden this impromptu like dance sequence. I always like it when you clearly see like who are probably the Broadway actors or that come in and really like, okay, we'll really show you how to do these dance moves.
Oh yeah, it's like the musical version of, these are obviously all stuntmen.
Yeah, you're like, wow, okay, all these people are A, young, B, really fit, and C, very charismatic because their smiles are just like from ear to ear. they know how to shine in the spotlight, so
it is a breezy 90-minute movie, man. It is. It's, and then you go to like the Judd Apatow 2-hour and 15-minute long comedies that don't have as much blocking, and I love those too. So I'm not, but there's just something very clinical and like efficient about this movie and its runtime, because it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of scenes. Sometimes it stops down for a couple minutes, but then it's on to the next thing. And I'm appreciative that I don't think that there's one getting dressed montage or trying on clothes montage. I was very thankful that there wasn't any of that.
So I know you mainly do video production, but I'm sure you there's a lot of similarities between the photography field and video production field. How do you think they sold Maddie's performance or Maddie's profession as a photographer here, and how hard it is?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially if he's just like a contract worker. I was kind of looking at the layout of stuff for like the the high school photo shoot and everything. I thought that it looked appropriately. It looked really big. Like, because here's the thing: my wife works at Fossil, the watch company, and so she actually photoshops and photo retouches all the photography. And so she was watching it. She's like, "This is a huge production. Like, this is a massive production. You're on location in Central Park." And I've shot in Central Park before, and it's not super. They usually will work with you, but for a huge fashion magazine like Poise, there's no doubt they're dropping high 5-6 figures on just the time, not counting the actors and the equipment and everything. So it just seemed like it was a really big production. I didn't see anything, and I was looking up that apparently that camera that he was using is pretty legit. So I think it did a decent job.
Yeah, he never seems too stressed by it all. He's a pretty like go with the flow type of guy.
He was eating gummies pretty much. I feel like anytime that he stepped on set, he was.
Even when he's interacting with his fiance, and she's like talking to him, you can tell he's just in another headspace.
I did have a question for you. Like, what did you not love about it, or what did you find that maybe didn't age well versus, what did?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit with the Thriller dance. While that might be some people's like favorite scene, there's some like cringe like scenes like that that don't really work for me. There's a little bit. I mean, I know this is like a silly movie, but I get a little bit into the headspace of that. Like, Jenna kind of really kind of transforms herself into this adult role very well. and for having like no experience even working a job before, she seems to navigate everything pretty well.
Well, Poise is a lot like middle school, a lot of clicks.
Yeah. And I probably, because of this podcast, I probably think a little bit deeper about these type of movies than I normally would. But kind of the question I asked you at the beginning, I just kind of got hung up a little bit of like, this is a lot for the universe to make somebody go through.
And there's no guarantee that she's going to get out of it either. Like it ends pretty sad. And now here's the thing that bothers me about this. It was, and again, this is me, you know, at some point, and I understand that she's 13 years old. Like, you are stealing this man from someone's fiance. Like, I don't care how unhappy she is. Like, there are so many times where they're like rolling around in the sand at the park under the Brooklyn Bridge, and I'm like, this is inappropriate. Like, you really don't need, like, Ruffalo should know better. He's kind of being skeezy if he's letting this, you know, it only took probably like a week or so for you know, them to fall back in love, and so it bothered me whenever she like goes into their room, goes into their house the day of his wedding, shuts the door, and I'm like, that's not appropriate. You need to not be doing that. And then I didn't love, so yeah, that's thinking a little bit too deep about the movie, but it does kind of bother me. It always kind of bothers me where it's like, oh, the whole I'm engaged to be married trope, that your romantic lead is like, you know where that's going to go usually. And thankfully this movie got to kind of have its cake and eat it too, because when that universe, he ended up getting married, and then, you know, she went back in time and changed the past, whatever. But I couldn't stand the, you know, they get married once they get back, and, you know, she kisses Maddie. My wife said something that was really on point. So, they kiss when they're 13, and then it cuts to when they're 30 years old getting married. And Hannah's like, why did they have to wait till they were 30? I'm like, that's a really good question. If they knew, they probably would have kids by then. And what self-respecting man, and I'm saying this as, you know, more of like a, who would live in that house? I understand what it means. I understand exactly story-wise. But then again, I'm probably just, it's just a bit at this point where you're just dissecting things you don't need to dissect.
Well, I kept on getting hung up. Even that's a good point about them, like just having to wait so long. Well, two things. I'll go back to this one, but just the very last shot of them moving into this house, and I just made the note that I was like, and nobody looks that happy or that good on a moving day.
No, and no HOA would ever allow that kind of house in that neighborhood.
Yeah. And the other thought I had too was a little bit of this like in between period. So does Jenna tell Maddie about this like alternate reality that she went to for a little while?
She's 13. Of course she is.
That's true.
But that's everything to him. Like that probably, if it's like, oh man, you did this and this. I mean, it's very manipulative if she's lying about it. But at that point, when you're 13 and the girl of your dreams likes you, you don't question that.
That's true. That is a very good point. So yeah, I think the other thing is like I said, I know it's this like fake world, but you know, I think one of the things that makes Big so successful is, you know, this fortune telling machine that he has to like seek out, you know, that really becomes the crux of like how he's going to get back to his normal self. And so just the fact that there's like this dust on this like house that Maddie built, you know, I just to me, it just seems kind of weak. I feel like they could have come up with something a little better. And it's just like, yeah, she interrupts the wedding, and then all of a sudden she's just like, oh, I want to go back. And it just, yeah, I don't know.
There's a darker version of this movie out there. There is. Where Jen keeps messing up with Maddie and has to go back in time and fix it, and just breaks the universe as we know it.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Movie Musings.
Were you good at taking a yearbook photo? Did you have an infamously like bad photo, or were you pretty proud of your yearbook photos?
I think I look pretty good. There's a couple ones where like you can kind of tell that I'm fake smiling, but you know, I took some pretty good photos. I actually, funny you bring that up. My son brought me one of my old yearbooks, like from 1992 or 93. I had a quote unquote girlfriend at the time. And so she, you know, he finds like, and I had written on there like worst nightmare for, you know, or like not my friend or friend. Like I had dictated as if I would forget. And granted, I needed the reminder, 20 something years later. But my quote unquote girlfriend had a photo there, and I put a big heart around it, and then I wrote girlfriend ... but not her best picture. And I remember thinking, I was, so my son showed me, my son read that to me. He's like, Dad, why'd you put not her best picture? And I'm like, I think I was just, in case someone saw her and knew she was my girlfriend, but I had a qualifier on why she may not have looked at her best. Like, I still had good taste.
Oh, wait, not too long ago, we pulled out some old yearbooks like for Hallie to look at. And for my junior high one, I quickly had to close it. I was like, you are not allowed to read that yearbook message from one of my friends. I was like, man, so and so was really dirty back then.
Oh my gosh. We're so concerned about protecting our kids, and then you flash to what I was listening to. I had Big Pimpin' on a loop.
So that was kind of a leading question because so it was my ninth grade year, and my freshman year, and I don't remember why I got this in my head, or somebody told me, but I got the idea in my head that like to not show my teeth when I smiled. Like somebody told me that, or something like that.
Sure.
That year, for whatever reason, it was like a trend amongst our guys to shave their head that summer. So anyway, my head was like shaved, like a little hair, not completely bald. And I don't have like the smallest ears. I don't think if somebody saw me now, they'd say, hey, you have big ears. But when my head was shaved, they definitely stood out. It's just me with this like goofy non-teeth smile. And when those proofs came back, like my friends had a field day about it. It was definitely a rough photo.
Probably gave some like Sling Blade vibes.
Yes, exactly. Oh man. So as far as candy goes, this movie, Razzles plays a really big part in these two relationship. Have you ever had that candy before?
I haven't. It sounds super gross. It just seems super. I mean, is it a real candy?
It is.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. Maybe it's a northeastern thing.
It's big selling point that first it's candy, then it's gum.
Yeah, I mean, I've had something like that. More like the Tootsie Pops that have the gum in the middle that you kind of have to work towards, which is always disappointing.
Yeah, it's part of the Tootsie Roll family. So.
Oh, okay. So technically, I probably have then.
Yeah. What is one of your favorite candies?
I've gotten away from the fruity types of candy, like the fruit types, and I've gravitated more towards what my dad used to do, and then he would just put like those big Reese's cups in the fridge.
Yeah.
And you would pull it like that. To me, like peanut butter cups, Twix, Snickers, those are more my candy of choice. Milk Duds used to be really popular, but now that I'm older, it just kind of hurts my teeth.
Yeah.
And so I try and stay away from it.
Yeah, I'm definitely that age now. Like I don't eat candy very often, but Halloween just happened not too long ago, and like even if I have like 2 or 3, even the little bite size type of candies, like all in a row, like my head hurts. I'm like, how old am I? I'm like, too much sugar. I don't know. Hopefully we don't have to go into too many awkward details here, but your junior high self, high school self, did you ever play any embarrassing party games? This movie starts off where, do they call it, is it 7 minutes in heaven? 6 minutes? I forget how long.
Well, 7 in heaven rhyme, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you ever have any awkward moments like that?
Not so much in middle school. In high school, there was one thing that we did, and it was really not safe. It was like, remember when like passing out used to be like a party trick, and you would like, you would do the whole like lean over, you'd be standing up or something, and you would kind of like hyperventilate, and then you would stand up really quick or whatever. I honestly don't think it was real. Because it was kind of a weird, almost hypnosis type thing, and then you could talk to the person, and the person would kind of talk to you kind of silly. I was really gullible to think that it was real. And that was probably the only. Gosh, I mean, we were more actual game people to where we want to play stuff. So that was maybe the weirdest thing at a party that I had seen, because I didn't drink. I didn't really partake in any type. I really didn't go to parties very often, honestly.
Yeah, we definitely. I just remember it was probably 6th or 7th grade, and I guess it was people's birthday parties, but they definitely would have like the kissing gang things, and it always made me like severely awkward about it. I was the kid that's in there going like, where are the parents? They should be here breaking this up.
And if you did spin the bottle, right when you took that photo and the girl comes into you, you just got that smile and the shaved head look.
Right, exactly.
Rom-Com Rankings.
First category is the romantic chemistry. So from 1 heart being the lowest, 5 hearts being the highest, what would you give the chemistry between Jenna and Maddie?
I would say 4, but I think that Jennifer Garner's doing 3.5 of those stars.
Okay.
Not saying Ruffalo's bad, because Ruffalo's great. It's just he seems he's never. I don't know. You can just tell that for some weird reason, he's obviously playing someone who's over it. He's kind of over it. He's moved on. There's a little bit of scorn there, and so, he's still kind of a Debbie Downer, an Eeyore type.
Yeah.
And he lost, and so it's Maddie's the one who has to. I'm sorry, but Jenna has to be the one to put in the work. To get but she's fantastic. So I would say 4.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with that with you too much. I did 3.5 just because, like, I definitely see them, together. Mainly it's because that they have the history, that they have and everything. So, but their personalities are different. They play off one another. But yeah, I don't think it's like, sizzling, but I don't think it's the worst either, for sure. But they're definitely find a comfort in one another for sure in those moments, and I buy it, like when they're just kind of having fun and he's not like scolding her.
And I think it's appropriate too, because you don't want them to have off the charts romantic chemistry, being that she's 13.
Yeah,
so it's in a. They have good on-screen chemistry, but it's not super. It's obviously not sexual,
right?
And it's a movie that it's a line that the movie has to walk pretty carefully. So I think almost you would want it to be a little bit not as, I don't know. It depends on what you would call chemistry. Is it sexual tension? There really is none, and I really appreciate that, because it avoids some problems.
Yes, for sure. So this came out in 2004. Me and my friend, we just kind of reviewed The Wedding Planner, which came out in 2001. So kind of the same vein. And just there's so many things like that are just weird now and kind of off kilter about that movie. And that is something about this movie. It does feel like of the early 2000s. But like you said, you really do feel like it kept those things in mind without it like getting just, for lack of better terms, weird.
Oh man, I really didn't like The Wedding Planner.
So second category, the best friends. So this one's a little hard because Jenna is kind of out there on an island by herself a little bit. Lucy, played by Judy Greer, is kind of her best friend, but is really not very supporting. No. In this movie. So maybe you could say like Jenna's assistant, it maybe falls into this category. There's definitely a support system around her towards the end, but I'm curious how you gauge this category.
No, it would be a 0.
Okay.
There's really no one. And one thing that I was grateful for was that I had forgotten that Jenna was the one who was actually, selling Poise's secrets and stuff. And so I'm kind of glad they made her unlikable, or at least that she became someone who was embarrassing to be around, even for her 13-year-old self. So, I mean, because to me, the assistant wasn't really, that wasn't a healthy relationship. and she kind of had to do those things because she worked for her. So I would say 0 hearts for best friends.
Okay. Uh, I put 1 down before you said 0, just to kind of maybe give it a little lift. But
Well, I mean, the other 13-year-old girls were nice. They seemed like a decent support system, but they're not going to be able to emotionally support a 30-year-old woman.
no. Okay, so I'm curious. Did you have a chance to listen to the soundtrack to this movie?
No, but I do remember. I can pull it up real quick so I can comment on it because I remember enjoying it.
Yeah. So while you're looking at that, just kind of, I would say I was like a little surprised, but like legit love the soundtrack. It is really, really good. um, so I rate it really high. I rate it 4.5 hearts because I'm self-admittedly a big fan of 80s music. And I mean, we talked about the Thriller scene. I mean, if you have Thriller by Michael Jackson, that's already going to kind of
It's already good.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's already good. But I mean, you have the Go-Go's in here. Everybody Wang Chung tonight, like it's just really good, and even some kind of modern songs for the time. Liz Phair has a song on there.
Yeah, that's the one that I remember the most.
Yeah. If you were having like a party of any sort, just some friends over, like a dinner party, and you put this soundtrack on, I bet a lot of people would be like, I love this playlist. Whitney Houston's on there. Like it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, you got me as a 4 or a 5. Just the fact that Pat Benatar and Rick Springfield are on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. Talking Heads, Maddie's a fan of the Talking Heads, like his older self is like wearing one of the band's t-shirts, so yeah, really solid. So I would suggest people like check it out. It's a lot of fun to listen to. And actually I pulled that the soundtrack charted inside the top 50 on the US Billboard 200 chart. So anyway, it kind of justified. I was like, oh well, that totally makes sense, especially before things such as Spotify or Apple Music, where you had to really buy said songs on a compilation. Like usually a soundtrack or a compilation, you would like 50 to 75% of the songs you really liked, but the other 25%, if you went and actually bought the soundtrack, you would probably actually listen to the whole thing.
100%.
So the fourth category, we kind of touched on it a little bit with this, the ending of this, the chase scene or the declaration of love. I mean, I think we both agree, like really, confronting the groom before he's about to get married, probably not the coolest move ever to do.
Yeah, but she's 13. She doesn't know any better.
That's true.
I would say it's a little bit more reminiscent of like a Notting Hill declaration of love, where it's a little more serious, a little more earnest. But I'm going to dock it 2 stars just for the situation. Like, you got to, I don't care if she's 13. You have to know that it's probably not the best idea to do it at, I can't tell, was it his house or her house?
No, it's his house because I guess he kept the playhouse that he built for her, right? Because he pulls it from the closet.
That he does. So yes, that means it would be his house, which, dodging the parents, it's a good call, but it just doesn't. Yeah, I think situationally, it's very dramatic, right? And I guess you have to have some stakes involved, and you kind of have to have the. So I understand why people would give it like a 4 or a 5, but I'm going to give it a 3 just on principle.
Okay, yeah, I gave it 2.5 just because of some of the things that we talked about earlier. But even now, sitting here thinking about it, like if I was Maddie's fiance and she sees that playhouse in his closet, I'd be like, why do you still have this?
Yeah.
That's quite a thing to still carry along with you when you're 30.
Okay, so explain to me this. How did it get from her house's basement closet to his closet? Because that was the last time he saw her or they spoke to each other, was it not?
Yeah.
So maybe you can assume the parents were like, "Hey, this is kind of awkward. Why don't you take this and then the mom's like, "Oh, it's so cute. My Maddie made such a great thing," and then puts it up in the closet and then it can stay there. I mean, I guess you can kind of work your way into it, but that's pretty sloppy.
Yeah, yeah, they didn't think too much about that one. Well, so the last category, rewatchability. What would you give this?
I would say 4.
Yeah, that's exactly what I gave it. Even though some of these other elements we've talked about kind of little all over the place, I would say. I mean, this is a movie. I think if you walked into a room and it's up there playing, you'd probably sit down and watch some of it. It's and like I rewatched this for this podcast, and it had been that long ago that we watched it with Hallie, and still very very enjoyable, very good. So, any final thoughts on this movie?
I mean, it's a really good. It's one of those movies that feels like you can show your 13-year-olds in a way. I know you have. Like, it's not, Notting Hill. I think some of the fish out of water body swap thing, and it's relatively clean for the most part. It doesn't feel like you don't have to feel bad about showing your kids this if they're 13.
Recommendations.
For recommendations, is there one like movie or one TV show, or it might even be a book that you are telling people that they should check out?
It depends on the person. I would say, as far as like TV goes, I would say Welcome to Wrexham season 2, and then there's something that I'm a little bit late to that I actually really enjoyed recently was the Dracula BBC miniseries. It's 3 90-minute episodes, and it's written by the guys who did who did Sherlock.
Oh, okay.
And it's a lot of fun.
Okay. What is that on?
Netflix. It's a Netflix original.
Okay. Interesting. Well, for mine, this is probably not normally a movie that I'm drawn to. It's also on Netflix, but have you seen the movie Fair Play?
No, is that the new Chris Evans, Emily Blunt one, or am I wrong?
No, it's not that one. So I'm actually was a little unfamiliar with the main actor and actress in this. I mean, even mispronounce their names. Phoebe Dynevor.
Oh, she's from Bridgerton?
Bridgerton. Okay, and his name is Alden.
Aaron. Yeah. That's Han Solo. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's him. Okay, that makes sense. But anyway, they play this couple. They work at the same hedge fund company, and she essentially gets a promotion over him, and they have this like behind the scenes. They haven't revealed to HR yet their relationship, and it just kind of spirals from there. So it's playing a lot with male and female dynamics, power dynamics. So if you've ever wondered if should I work with my spouse, this movie would definitely be an argument against that case. But it's not quite. It doesn't quite get as bizarre as something as like Fatal Attraction, but it's kind of in that vein. I never saw Disclosure with Michael Douglas, but I would automatically assume it's kind of that type of movie. But it actually has a lot to say about gender dynamics, definitely kind of the role that physical sex plays in relationships and those dynamics. Anyway, I for lack of better, it kept me kind of the edge of my seat, just so much of like I wasn't sure where it was going. So anyway, I think you would like it. So it might be a little tough watch for some people for sure, because it's pretty raw, but it's a movie that kind of stood out to me from this year, especially for Netflix original, which can be kind of hit or miss sometimes.
And they don't promote it either. They just basically throw it out there for one weekend and then it gets buried.
Right. I did actually remember seeing an actual trailer for it, and I don't know, we must have been watching a football game or something like that, and that's where it caught my attention. And I did a quick search of like the kind of ratings, and it had pretty high ratings. So that's why I checked it out, and I really liked it.
Oh, I'll check it out.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for going back in time with me with this film.
Always. It's a joy.
Okay, quick question for you, Whitney, before we wrap this podcast up. Would you rather go back and be 13, or would you rather go back and be 30?
30. I hated being 13. Hated it. Middle school was just atrocious. I had friends. I just was too shy to like stand up and do anything bold, and I just would like kind of follow the pack. I was never mean to anybody. Like I didn't join like a mean girl group or anything. And I don't think nobody like stuffed me in a locker, but I did not want to go back into that time whatsoever. The angst about did me in. I liked when I hit 30. I kind of hit my stride when I hit 30. I was married. I was about to have a baby. We had a house. Like 30 was good.
Yeah, that's good. Like in our conversation I had with Mark, did you ever have any awkward yearbook photos?
Not as awkward as your yearbook photos, but yes, I did have. I begged my mom to get a haircut that was short, like Demi Moore. I don't know if Deborah Green listens, but if any of my friends know Deborah Green, I wanted my hair cut like her, but they have thin hair and I have a ton of hair. Like I just have thick, and it's beautiful hair. I know that, but it's thick. And so I cut it, and it was more like they cut it like a bowl cut around my head, and the bottom was shaved up. I mean, it was just true like when you're in 5th grade and you're born in the 1980s, that's what everybody's looked like. It was horrific. And my mom cried and cried for days. That's what my hair looked like. So those yearbook pictures are lovely.
Yeah. As always, check out moviesyourlife.com for episode reviews and more. If you love this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it. This really helps us with finding new listeners. And
send us one of your yearbook photos.
Yeah,
I just cut you off.
You did, but that's totally good. And in the spirit of the holidays, we do have a support/donate button on our website, and also in the link of the show notes. So that really helps us keep this podcast going. So any kind of donation or support is greatly appreciated. So happy holidays, and join us next week as we review a holiday classic and number 24 on the best rom-coms list, Love Actually.
Aww.